Welcome to the Creative Mind Smart Money podcast, where we turn financial confusion into creative confidence. I'm Samantha Eck, bookkeeper and fractional CFO for creative entrepreneurs. Each week, I'm sharing my financial expertise and actionable strategies to help you build a thriving creative business. Plus, you'll hear from industry experts who bring fresh perspectives on growing your business beyond the numbers. Because building a successful creative business starts with strong financial foundations. Your next chapter starts now. You're listening to the Creative Minds Smart Money podcast, and today I have special guest Taylor with me. Taylor is the founder of Legal Miga Law, offering accessible legal support for small business owners through the Legal Miga membership. Specializing in trademarks, contracts, copyrights, and business formation, she helps entrepreneurs protect their brands and content with strategic legal measures. With a background in civil litigation and consumer protection, Taylor is passionate about empowering BIPOC and female-owned businesses. She has founded the Legal Miga Library, a resource hub providing essential legal tools for entrepreneurs. A California Super Lawyers Rising Star and Cleo Reisman Awards runner-up, Taylor is licensed to practice in California and all U.S. district courts in the state. How are you today, Taylor? It's so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm a little tired. I have a brand new baby. Well, she's not brand new, but she's new.
That's totally understandable. So before we really dive into the nitty-gritty of everything, I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you really got into the legal side of business and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah. So I've been a lawyer for a little over, I think, 10 years now. And I was working in law firms for other people for 4.5 of those years and did a bunch of different types of law. Wasn't really 100% attached to like loving what I was doing. There were parts of what I would do that I did, but I just wasn't like super passionate. And I always was like, who are those people that are really passionate about their jobs? Like, what is that like? And just kind of through wanting to have my own thing, like wanting to have a very flexible schedule, planning out to potentially have kids and a family, started my own law firm. And we've been doing this for 5.5 years now. And I'm able to like pick my clients, talk to my clients, like select who I want to work with, like hone in on exactly who I want to be helping. And it's not only, I mean, fulfilling for me, but it's also really amazing to be able to educate communities specifically on legal. I think I came into this thinking like I'm going to be a lawyer and help people and do the legal stuff, but there's so much education that's required far before anybody ever like pays us anything. So the education piece I think was something I had no idea was coming, but it's probably my favorite part.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like business owners in general just have a lack of educational resources when it comes to like legal, financial matters, things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people being like, what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. What's really the biggest differences between an LLC, an S-Corp, and a corporation? And how does a business owner know which one is right for them?
Good question. And I love that you're asking the difference S-Corp too, because that is a huge misconception a lot of people have that that's an entity, but it's so I get it because people are always like, I have an S-Corp, I have an S-Corp. The differences are an LLC and a corporation are different types of legal entities. There's different types of corporations that you can have. But when you form an entity, what most business owners are doing, they're either forming an LLC, like 90% of the time, and then some other people are forming corporations. They might have a special type of corporation. However, when it comes to tax time, your tax person's going to counsel you and advise you on what's best for your business. And what's tricky is an LLC or a corporation can technically be taxed as an S corp. So that is advantageous to a lot of business owners. So who are you talking to more? You're talking to your tax people more than your attorney. So you're usually like, oh, my S corp, my S corp. So a lot of people think they have S corp. What they really have is either an LLC that's taxed as an S corp or a corporation that's taxed as an S corp. But what we're working with most often is LLCs for business owners, unless you're a certain type of business that just can't form an LLC or you can't operate under those laws. Depends on your state, depends on what you're doing. But most businesses can form LLCs, and they're great and they're super flexible, pretty easy to get formed to maintain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I love that you specified that it's a classification because I hear the same things all the time. People are like, "Oh, I'm an S corp. I'm an S corp,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "You are an S corp, but like, what's your like? Are you an LLC? Are you a
Yeah.
corporation?" And most of the time, they are that LLC. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's good to know. And I'm glad you pointed that out because most business owners are like, no, I'm an S Corp. And I'm like, I know from a tax perspective, you're an S Corp, but what's your like legal paper? And usually they haven't seen the legal paperwork in like years. So they're like,
yeah,
actually, I don't know what I am. And then they have to go check.
yeah. And then you have people who don't even know that they are an S corp because they've just been kind of like pushed into it. So I think that that's something you definitely need. Like from my perspective, I'm like, you don't just talk to like one or the other, like a
Yeah.
CPA or a legal person. You need to talk with both to
Mhm.
figure out what's best for your business.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, ideally, you want to probably check in with a lawyer like once a year and you don't want to have other problems. I'm good with talking to clients once a year or more if they have more stuff coming up. But your tax person, usually people are just talking to them more. So they're like, I have an S corp. And I'm like, no.
Yes. So, what are some of the common mistakes new business owners make when setting up their business entity?
Most common, you can certainly file your entity on your own. So you can file your LLC on your own. You can file your corporation on your own. I would say if you are looking into a corporation and you want to file it on your own, definitely I would at least talk to a lawyer because they might talk you into an LLC and it might be cheaper for you. Some people think they need a corporation and they don't. Some people actually try to form an LLC and they form it and they find out they can't actually operate as an LLC. So, for example, certain professional licensed individuals like therapists, any sort of like doctors, lawyers, you commonly can't have a regular LLC. But that's number one mistake, I think, is picking the wrong entity. Sometimes it's not catastrophic, but sometimes it means like your entity is not valid. Sometimes it just means you might be in a more complex entity that you're paying more for, you're doing more stuff for, that we could have you in an LLC and it's essentially going to do what you need. Other common mistake we see when people file on their own is they just don't draft up the internal documents. So when you form your LLC or your corporation, your state's going to let you know, like, hey, you missed this document. But the internal things that never get filed, like the operating agreement for an LLC, if you're forming your own LLC and you've never done it before, you don't know what's involved, you're not going to know that you need that probably. So if you don't have that internal document, I mean, it's not the end of the world. We can always draft it for you, but that's usually number one thing we see missing.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that because I think a lot of people get those certain like even without using a lawyer, there's everyone always looks at those like legal Zoom things like that, and a lot of those people don't give you proper information. They just throw documents at you and they're like, "Here you go, it's filed," but you
Yeah.
don't actually understand what went on.
Yeah. That's why I mean, I have nothing against like the legal Zooms, like Legal
Yeah.
Shield. I think you do have to be a little bit informed and do a little research on your
Yes.
own just to check, like, what would I get if I did this on my own? What would that be? What would I be paying? What would be involved if I work with LegalZoom? What would I be paying? What's involved with an attorney? And I think if you get scheduled with a consult with an attorney, we're going to give you like tell you at least everything you need. So then you can at least compare pricing, what needs to get filed, what you're comfortable doing on your own, maybe. Some people are like, I don't want to touch it. I'd rather you do it as the lawyer. Some people really
Yeah.
want to file it on your own. And we can kind of guide you and say, here's the things we don't want you to miss. But I think just a little bit of research at the beginning can help you make sure that you're not missing all this stuff later on.
Yeah, like having that little bit of education to start off with.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you go with because of course there's always other cheaper companies out there and everything like that, but you wanna just make sure you have that knowledge before you're walking into something, and then all of a sudden, years down the road, you're like, "Wait, I don't have an operating agreement?"
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some business owner, I'm kind of like that too with taxes. Like, I am not my brain just doesn't like taxes at all. But so I end up paying a higher premium to work with people that handle absolutely everything. So if you're that type of business owner that you know, like, I don't want to touch legal stuff, that usually means you're going to have to pay somebody more to be fully on top of it for you. The middle ground, like filing companies, legal Zooms, they do operate in a way where you have to be a little bit more involved and aware of what's included. So you can't always come back and be like, they never told me about this. It's like they're they're a middle ground for a reason, right? They're a little
Yes.
bit more affordable. And I understand where people get confused where they're like thinking they're getting like this whole complete package. I think those companies should be doing a little bit better of a job fully explaining like we are I'm sure that they do, but like I think they could do a better job of explaining like if you want the full thing, you need to go to an attorney. Here's what we're providing, here's where we kind of land on the scale.
Yes, absolutely. So, for someone who starts their business as a sole proprietor, how do they know when it's time to switch to an LLC or another entity?
Good question. Different for every industry, but what we look at is a couple of things. What industry you're in and how risky it is, just how what you're operating in terms of business. So anybody that comes to me that's like, I want to launch a skincare line, or like we're in California and I want to have some sort of like hemp CBD, anything like topical food, high risk stuff, like I'm usually telling that person immediately form an entity because there's just things involved that like could get tricky really fast. It doesn't mean if you're in another industry that it's not good to have it early, but if you're, starting slow as a side hustle and you want to test the waters and see if this business can work for you, and maybe you're consulting or coaching and you have one or two clients throughout the year and you're just testing it, that's a situation where if you maybe want to hold off on an LLC or an entity because you don't want to spend what it costs because you're maybe making just as much as it would cost to form the LLC, like we don't want to put you under immediately. So
Yeah.
balancing how much do things cost, risk of the business and like just inherent risks that are involved. And also like it usually comes down to what the business is going to make. So people are typically making that call based on that. So if your business is immediately like taking off and making a ton of money, a lawyer saying, "Hey, you should form an LLC," it's not going to sting as much as if you're just starting, it's like a side hustle thing, you're testing things
Yeah.
out, you haven't made anything, and I'm over here telling you like, "We got to drop 1,200 on an LLC." You're like, "Whoa, I don't want to do that." So a lot of things involved, but I think at the riskier the business is, I usually start that conversation like way earlier. We always start the conversation just so people know that the option is open, but people also don't jump into it. I think a lot of times for financial reasons, which I totally understand. Like if you're starting a business, you don't want to immediately be negative a lot. Like I know there's a lot we have to spend to get things going, but there's
Yeah.
decisions people make.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point because I know a lot of people say that, the LLC is that extra protection against your personal assets, which a lot of people I think tend to forget about. They're like, "Oh, I can just be a DBA and if I get sued, like only my business is liable." But there's more to it than that, which is why I think even just talking to a lawyer to understand that would be so beneficial to anyone who's looking to start a business.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a business owner, there's so much you have to research and be aware of. And like, I know legal is not a fun one for lots of people, but I think just doing a little bit of that research, like you said, is helpful because you can also budget things out. Like talking to a lawyer, you're probably going to have to pay them an upfront fee to schedule a consultation. But during those calls, like we're explaining to clients, like, yes, you have to spend on this, or no, you don't have to spend on this. So, like, we could end up saving you a couple grand on something we told you to wait on for a couple months versus just like doing everything immediately and then you're in the hole like 5, 10K. And we also I will have conversations about lots of stuff where we're like, hey, hold off on that because we need to get this stuff cleared first. And I think it's good just to also strategize from a budget perspective too.
Yeah, absolutely. So making a pivot from like entities to contracts can often feel like overwhelming in businesses, but what are the absolute must-have contracts every business owner should have in place?
Good question. I was just going through this list yesterday. The number one thing business owners need to have, most of us have websites. So your website has to have a privacy policy. That's just legally required across the board. Several states have actually penalties that they can impose. Doesn't happen all the time, but technically they can impose penalties if you don't have a privacy policy. There's also weird stuff like if you want to run ads on Facebook specifically and you don't have a privacy policy, like they could come back and say like no ads. So privacy policy is mandatory. That's essentially telling your website visitor, like, "Hey, here's what we're collecting about you." And so that one's a must. Not necessarily like a contract, but it's a policy that you have to have on your
Yeah.
website, all businesses. Paired with that is terms and conditions. It's not
Mhm.
mandatory, but on your website, we always recommend them because you want to be able to dictate how your visitors, how your customers are using your site. If you're a service provider, like coaching, consulting, and you do one-on-ones or even one-to-many in like a group setting, we definitely want like a client services contract or whatever type of service it is that you're providing. Photographers, videographers, you want a contract definitely for that relationship. How that looks for a product seller or like retail business is your terms of purchase. So wherever those land, whether it's on your website or if you're like in person selling things, you want there to be some sort of written relationship between you and the buyer of whoever's purchasing something from you. That for people who sell online, like if you're doing courses or digital products, that can also just look like the terms of purchasing that thing. So those are like our must-haves across the board. Again, depending on the business, we can extrapolate a lot from there. But also when you're hiring people, definitely having those agreements in writing. And I just like good rule of thumb is like anybody that you're in a business relationship with probably needs to have a contract between you and them. So like a customer, a client, a partner, a vendor, anybody you're dealing with, there should be a contract.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's so important. But what are some of the biggest contract mistakes that you see small business owners making?
Yeah. I think the copy pasting of other terms or policies or contracts that I mean, if it's such a spectrum, right? So like people that have been in a service industry for a long time, they've worked with a contract for a really long time and they like work with an attorney sometimes or adding bits and pieces. They're probably a little bit more seasoned in being able to recognize what the contract needs versus like brand new business owner, never seen the contract that they need before, and they're copying it from somebody else or they're like copying up something from somebody else's website. I don't ever say it's, like, okay to copy something and, like, add bits and pieces, but it's that seasoned business owner probably knows a little bit more of what to look for versus that
Yeah.
brand new business owner who's maybe never talked to a lawyer, maybe never had anything revised or drafted for them. So, the copying without, like, blindly just adding stuff is a biggie because that can actually if we put things in our contract that aren't good for the business, then it's like, "Whoa, whoa, why did we even put that in there?" We see that a lot where people are like, I saw this other company adding this because it's a cool benefit, and I'm like, that sets off a whole list of implications for your business if you wanna add that in. That, and then probably number 1, like, missing provision all the time is just, like, a termination provision, so how do you
Mhm.
cancel that contract? And I'm not 100% sure, but I've kind of deduced from, like, looking at these frequently, it's just because business owners are so optimistic and they don't wanna think about, like, "What if this goes terribly?" So they're not
Yeah.
also thinking about, "How do I get out of this contract?" But we wanna be able to get ourselves out of a contract for a reason other than just other side breached, because typically that's gonna require, like, a major thing happening where you have to go talk to a lawyer and see if you can get out of the contract versus do we have something in the contract that says we can just leave or like we can walk away with like 7 days notice, which in most cases is ideal and we want to be able to do as long as it's fair for both parties.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's totally true. When I first started, I took, like, a client-based course where I had because I knew the bookkeeping side of things, but I had no idea how to handle clients. So they gave you, like, a base line contract. And I took that contract and I started like adding things to it. But then what I did was I was like, I don't know if this is legally sound enough. So I was like, I don't want to give this to a client. And then all of a sudden the words I'm using or how I'm saying it isn't right.
Yeah.
So I met with a lawyer and had them go through it. And he's like, yeah, he's like, this might like signal bad things to a client. He's like, you
Yeah.
might want to word this differently or just remove it entirely,
Yeah.
and we went through and just like crossed everything out and got everything done. But I think that's so important because you only know what you know, whereas like, a lawyer's in their zone of genius, so they're gonna know more about what a contract should actually have.
Yeah. Yeah, and also what we like to do, what most lawyers will do is when we're reviewing your contract for you, we're going to make sure that you know what's in it. Because if you send it out to
Yes.
a client and they ask you a question, I feel like there's nothing more embarrassing of like, oh, I don't actually know what that means. And I just asked you to
Yes.
sign this. And clients can tell if you're just like Googling stuff and like spitting back random stuff from the internet. So
Yeah.
I like to make sure I'm like, look, here's what we changed. Here's why this is good for you. And if you don't understand anything in this, like, let's talk about it so you can regurgitate it back to your client. Because if you're asking them to sign something, you should be able to explain it, not in like legal terms, obviously, but you should be able to explain for the most part what it means because you don't want to be in that spot where they're like, I don't like what this says. And you're like, I don't even know what that means. Cause then it's also just kind of embarrassing.
Yes. And speaking of that, like what should business owners look out for before signing a contract from a client, vendor, or partner?
Yeah, I like to hone in on intellectual property specifically. So it depends on like what side you're on. But if you are signing something where you're maybe hiring like a web designer, graphic designer, somebody to do social media for you, anybody that's creating something for you or your business, technically they own that material until they're handing it over in the contract. So the contract with them, if they're having you sign something, industry standard is like you will own this as the business once you've paid, like once that exchange is made. What I don't like is or what we shouldn't be agreeing to is like if they're keeping all the rights. They shouldn't be. If you're paying them to create like a logo or something for you, whatever you're paying them, you're exchanging it and they no longer own that logo. It's on them how much they want to charge for that, however much you're paying for them. They can like it's super common for them to be like, "Hey, I want to be able to feature this on my site because I did your work like in my, book of work or whatever to feature it." But there needs to be a fair exchange. It's not up to you to decide like what they're charging you. So if it's a
Yeah.
logo person charging you like $50, like that's on them if they want to hand all that stuff over. So ideally, we want the intellectual property to be detailed and you're not signing anything that puts you in a weird spot of like, oh, I paid for this, but I don't actually own it. That can go both ways for IP. But IP is usually the section where people are copy pasting, they're taking stuff from different contracts. That can get tricky once you start to see people don't actually understand that part. And then everybody's just signing. And then it's like, whoa, this doesn't make sense for like either side.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's so true because, I even paid for like my logo, like a commercial, I think it was like a commercial license or whatever,
Mhm.
so that they technically release it to me and now it's like it's mine. But I feel like that's a lot of things that people tend to forget is that if you don't have something like that in place, technically you could be potentially not owning your logo or whatever
Yeah.
properties you have.
And that's a question we have when we're doing trademark applications for logos. We don't need that document necessarily to file the application, but I always ask, like, do you own this logo? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, who made it for you? And they'll tell me, and I'm like, do you have the contract? Can we see? And they're like, oh, we don't have the contract. So I understand where people are coming from. They think they paid for something, so they
Yeah.
own it, but that's not actually true unless we have it in writing. So that's something that down the line, you're like, oh, I don't actually own my logo. Interesting.
Yes, I think one of the most important things I've learned, like just not in business, but also corporately, is always have a paper trail.
Yeah.
And that like totally applies to everything legal and like financial. Just your whole world of business, leave a paper trail somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We love a paper trail.
Yes. So what's one legal issue that blindsides a lot of new entrepreneurs and how can they avoid it?
I think a lot of people like have a good grasp of LLC or entity
Yeah.
and they know it's something that they need, but maybe they just haven't made the move to do it yet. I think a lot of people are aware of contracts, but they just kind of shy away from them. But I think trademarks and protecting your intellectual property, so like copyright and trademark, I think people either believe that's something they do like way far down the line or like when something turns out to be really valuable when actually you can start that process way earlier. You actually own trademarks and copyrights by default at a limited scale, you own that stuff way earlier. So your business owners are working with things that they don't aren't aware of are valuable, are assets, and we need to be at least planning to protect those things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, when do you think they should DIY their legal work and when should they absolutely hire a professional?
I think, I mean, technically, trademark applications, copyright applications, anything you want to file, technically you can file on your own. But things that I typically recommend filing through an attorney are trademark applications, just because there is like a search process that we do that if you don't do that, we could file an application and like it can get refused for a number of reasons. And then we've wasted probably 8 to 9 months of waiting, filing fees, and then we have to go pay more on
Yeah.
top to fix that. So that's more of like a financial reason to at least just start with a lawyer early. As long as we've talked to a lawyer about like an LLC or something similar, I think there are filing companies that can form those for you if you're a single owner of a business. It does get a lot trickier when you have multiple owners. So at that point, I definitely recommend like having a lawyer involved, but you can go through like a filing partner if your budget is limited to file an LLC, to file a corporation if you need. But again, they're not going to give legal advice. So you want to really go into that knowing like, okay, here's what I need, here's what I want, this is what I'm paying for. Contracts probably should be attorney drafted at some point. There's templates that a lot of attorneys have. We have templates, a bunch of other attorneys have templates. I think creating your own contract is just it's nearly impossible to do unless you have a lot of experience in it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think because we don't know how to talk like lawyers talk, and there's like it's a different language almost. So
It is. It's a weird length, but
yes.
here.
A lot of creatives and small business owners just tend to avoid anything legal because it feels really intimidating. But how can they kind of shift that mindset to make it easier to approach lawyers or legal stuff?
Yeah, I think ultimately finding lawyers or professionals that you feel comfortable with, because I think the intimidating part, and I could be totally wrong about this, but having talked to clients, I think the intimidating part is not knowing what you need, but then also knowing lawyers do charge a lot. So I think people don't want to approach those conversations just immediately getting like all their whatever budget they had wiped
Yeah.
out, and so I think they're a little fearful of that, but there are a lot of lawyers. We do this too, we charge flat fee for pretty much everything, so you know going into it what you're being charged. We're not doing, like, an hourly, like, random bill at the end of the month, and we'll also, like, hop on a consultation and assess out, like, what a quote would be for a project, so you can see that, you can budget it out, and also finding lawyers that you feel comfortable with, that you're not feeling like they're
Yes.
just gonna charge me for any little thing. I like to think that we do a good job of, like, I'll tell clients, like, Don't pay me to do this. I think you can do this on your own," or, like, "I'll really do it if you want me to, but this is my fee versus if you wanna file this on your own." So I think finding people that you're comfortable with and know do really have your best interest in mind. Like, yes, there are things we do need to charge for. There's filing fees involved with everything. There's
Yeah.
long processes, but I think feeling comfortable that you know this person isn't trying to like pull the wool over your eyes with how much is being
Yes.
charged, I think is really important factor.
Yeah, and I think that kind of stands true to like a lot of service providers because I think a lot of us are just very like cautious about who we put our money into nowadays.
Yeah.
So understanding and finding someone that you like connect with a little bit more will make that probably a little less scary to
Yeah.
approach for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's across the board. When
Yes.
we recommend other service providers, I either make sure that I have worked with them before,
Yep.
or that I know that they're at least super honest and transparent, and they'll tell people like, "Yes, you need this," or "No, you don't need this," or, "Here's how we can work together." I think that's really important, is really and not being afraid to ask questions either. Like, I am never upset when somebody wants to know exactly, like, if they're telling me, "I want my LLC, but I wanna know exactly what you're doing." I tell
Yeah.
them, "Here's a list of what we do. please go compare this to if you want to look at LegalZoom, if you want to go look at filing on your own, because I want them to see what's involved. I want them to see the budget and the pricing for what's involved so that they
Yes.
can appreciate like this is what we're providing to you versus here's what the middle ground is, here's what the do it yourself option is. And once they're informed, I'm like, yeah, make whatever decision you need to. Like, I'm not going to get mad if you want to do it on your own. If you feel comfortable, like, I'd rather you save the money on that.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way because I've had clients come to me and be like, hey, like my CPA advised me to become an S-Corp or something like that. And the one lady, she made, I think it was only like $10,000 profit that year. And I was like, there's no way you're ready. I was like, think of all the extra costs that you have to add on, like your
Yeah.
payroll, things like that. I was like, so I think that is true. Like you really need to be just upfront and honest.
Yeah.
And that's such a huge factor in making it a little less scary and a
Yeah.
little more like, okay, I can work with this person.
Yeah. I think that's just a generally better way to go. And I prefer to be like that too, because I don't want to deal with a client in like 2 years that's like
Yes.
mad at me for charging them something that they weren't aware of. Like any little thing that we have to do, like we get permission from the client. I'm like, hey, we have to do this now. It's going to be this much.
Yeah.
Even if it's costing me more time that I could be charging like hundreds of bucks. I'm like, hey, client, I'm going to charge you $50 to do this. Is that okay? Like, I would rather have them be comfortable and know everything all the way leading up because like nightmare clients are not fun for anybody. And I don't think anybody wants to deal with that situation. I just prefer to be like upfront and transparent.
Yes. So important. Now, if someone today listening wants to legally protect their business but doesn't know where to start, what do you suggest is the first step that they should take today?
I think the 3 foundational things that we typically address are what we talked about. So you did a really good
Yes.
job of covering those entities, trademarks, and then also contracts. I think if it's in a budget, schedule a chat with an attorney so they can lay out what you're going to need down the line so you can at least start planning for that. If it's in the budget to hire an attorney to like do all this stuff, just get one on board immediately if you know that you can afford it and you don't want to touch any of this stuff. But if you're more of like, I need to do it myself, I think starting with those 3 foundational things and working out from there is a really good idea. And like myself and other attorneys I know, we have a lot of free information on social media platforms. We have like freebies on our sites with a bunch of info. So if you do want to do it yourself, that is going to mean you have to put a little bit more work into it. So like download this stuff, like educate yourself a little bit. And if you're like, I don't want to touch this, then maybe you do need to hire somebody to do more of it for you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Taylor, and sharing your knowledge. I just love that you're empowering other business owners to take actionable steps with legal matters. Where can my audience connect with you, learn more about you, or work with you?
Yeah, we are on most platforms as Legal Miga, Legalmiga. And then our site is just legalmegalaw.com. And I mean, I'm remote virtual. So those are typically the best ways to either contact or learn about whatever it is we do. And we have a ton of information and like freebies if people just want to download and take a peek and see maybe what they need.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll include whatever we can in the show notes for you. But thank you so much for coming today and talking. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
The truth is, your business deserves protection, and you deserve to feel confident in how you're running things behind the scenes. Whether you're just getting started or already growing fast, getting your legal foundations in place can be the exact thing that helps you scale safely and sustainably. If this episode helped you see the legal side of business in a new light, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a review, share it with a friend, or just DM me and let me know what stood out to you. And if you have more ideas for topics or guests like this, make sure to fill out the form in the description box below. And hey, if you're ready to take the next step with your finances too, you know I'm always here. From cash flow strategy to full-on CFO support, let's build your business with intention. Until next time, as always, have a wonderful rest of your week and we'll see you next week. Farewell, fellow travelers.